Hi everyone, today's webinar is brought to you by Sheep Connect South Australia, which is funded through AWR and the Sheep Industry Fund, and funding from South Australian Murray-Darling Basin Natural Resources Management Board through NRM levies and the Australian Government. Today's presenter is Charlie Crozier. Charlie is a producer from Sherwood in the southeast of South Australia, and he was impacted by bushfire 2 years ago. Today, Charlie will share some of his experiences and his lessons learned. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Jodie. Welcome, everyone. What can I say? It's a huge journey you're about to embark on, whether you like them or not. Our business was impacted on the 6th of January 2018, and we have a self-replacing commercial dorper enterprise with some cropping. Property is about 840 hectares and divided up into a lot of cell grazing. So we've got about 74 paddocks in total, and I think there was 5 cells not burnt in our burnover. On the day, it was a normal catastrophic 45-degree day with huge winds. We lost 650 ewes out of, at that particular time, we were carrying about 1,200 odd ewes. So probably the initial thing was I wasn't actually home at the time. I was probably an hour and a half behind the fire front, which was good, in that I have not experienced the burnover. So we've had to deal with the aftermath, but I've had a lot of other people that have dealt with the initial burnover. We did luckily have a CFS truck on the front lawn, which saved our house. And we basically, then some close friends and I managed to save the house another few times that afternoon and control what other issues we could with sheds and so forth. We were extremely lucky though. We got out of it sort of lightly, really, compared to what a lot of others have in these recent fires. So, the initial shock, I don't think, caught up with us for a month, it feels like, because it was just total carnage in that, the phone didn't stop ringing 24/7 for at least 2 weeks, I reckon. But the initial thing was to control the fire, which we managed to do relatively quickly within a day. And then it was getting on to the euthanisation of stock. I had some great community help there. That was all under control within a half a day. We had them buried. I didn't actually pull the trigger on a single sheep. I was extremely lucky again in that respect. The guys went pretty hard. If anything was suspect, they just destroyed it. We did have insurance, so we didn't want to have stock lingering in illness for weeks on end. I think in the end we may have put down about 10 extras after the day. The next move was, water. We had a lot of poly pipes that were burnt, so we were just bleeding water everywhere. So some of those sort of things were just, I reckon it took me at least 3 days to get to the back country and see what devastation had happened down there. And also...
Sorry, Charlie, just to clarify, are you on mains or have you got dams? What's your water supply?
So all our water supply is through submersible and into one main storage, 20,000 gallon storage tank, and then we pump it out to satellite tanks. All those are underground poly, but it's like everything. They've got to come out of the ground at varying points to go into tanks and other troughs and things. So depending how much grass was around some of those. And then also we had a fair network of poly on the top of the ground for our grazing system in the paddocks as well. So that day we burnt 8 kilometres of poly pipe as well as all our fencing. nearly 300 kilometres of electric fencing across our farm. So it's fairly intense, but there's a fair bit of clean-up too. So the day after Justine Drew was in contact from Struan, I had a good working relationship with Justine, so she knew where we were and what had happened straight away. So that was also another thing. Of a couple of us, Steve, Jeske and myself, were sort of ended up being key farmers in the limelight, I suppose, with media and all those sort of things as well, and from our community's perspective. So that was another role to fulfil, which was invaluable. We also chose an outside landholder who was, I suppose, a bit of a champion, but a quiet one at that. But he was also detrimental in making sure that went round to all the farms over the following months, and sort of acting as the liaison and finding out what people's needs were and all that sort of thing. So that was part of how the Sherwood Fire Committee was formed, and that was a separate journey in itself, which I think will be invaluable for all involved in other communities. Once we'd got all our sheep and so forth euthanized, the adjustment was the other thing. Luckily, we had a lot of offers locally that we could get out the remaining sheep off, and we kept a few at home, but not many. So that sort of took its own course. They were only 15 k's down the road, so it was very convenient for us. The hay started to flow, and at first I thought, we probably wouldn't need it, but then I actually found some time one night to sit down and sort of start planning and thinking, trying to get a clear head, which was, I reckon that took me 6 months to get a clear head. But anyway, don't say no to hay when it's offered, because it's not. We didn't actually use our offered hay until sort of the break of the following season. So those truckloads were invaluable then for us. So don't be afraid to accept the help. That's probably, everyone deals with it in a different manner. We've got guys that hit the ground running the following morning. They were out fencing, and then we've still got individual businesses there that haven't even started doing anything 2 years later. And I'm sure that's the same all over the country. Everyone deals with these sort of issues differently.
So Charlie, you talked a little bit there about the priorities that you had. So immediately it was the welfare of the livestock, and then sort of fencing and water. Was there any other? Did you have any other priorities in that immediate aftermath of the fire?
Yes. So after that initial sort of probably week and just trying to get everything roughly sorted, a good mate and I jumped in a vehicle, and I put my daughter in the back with a laptop, and we spent half a day doing every paddock, just taking stock virtually of fencing, trees, some basic pasture assessment, troughs, everything that needed work, and put it on a priority scale of what fencing may be salvageable, what was semi okay, and then what was totally destroyed. And we marked it all on maps and all that sort of thing. So it helped us come up with a bit of a list of priorities. And then within another week, my agronomist was out, and we did a more in-depth pasture assessment, on the ground, scratching. We had a fair bit of loose and subclover, ryegrass type pastures. So we did a lot of, hunting seed and all that sort of thing. And we're reasonably comfortable with the burn had taken definitely any dead material out of the equation, but there was a good seed bank there. So Shane and I developed a pasture plan and cropping plan moving forward for the coming break of the season. which was not set in concrete, but it definitely gave us knowing what our seed requirements were and things like that we could start getting sorted. Being in our non-wetting country down there, we definitely had some vulnerable country that had been clay spread in the years gone by, but we took the opportunity to grab a bit more contract work on that, just topping up some of the tops of a few ridges that could potentially turn nasty if left being vulnerable. Mel Fraser from Perza was in, and we definitely spent some more time looking at soil vulnerability and all that sort of thing. And, some of the neighbours chose to get a fair bit of clay spreading and delving done. It really came back to availability of contractors, and that was the same with the fencing and those sort of things. It just need to start thinking of those things straight away, just book in the contractors and say, right, try and get those things underway, because that was probably one of the biggest limiting factors, is that a lot of the local contractors were flat out anyway, but this sort of just put a heap more pressure on them. And they were really good. They did prioritise us as much as they could. But again, it was getting hold of material and everything too.
Yeah. So Charlie, did you make any changes to your farm design? So where your fences were and your other infrastructure as a result of the fire? Did you need to do that, or did you do that?
Definitely, obviously your boundaries are set. So that was pretty simple. That was probably the matter of getting stock proof from outside sources as quickly as we could. Then we assessed our infrastructure. All our laneway system, which runs through the middle of the farm, was not too bad. We put new lead out cables for all our wiring. Electric fencing, I think we've put in nearly 1.5 kilometres of underground cable to date now. As far as changing other layouts, a lot of our cell grazing setup was put in pre-auto steer and having AB lines and everything. So we took that opportunity to get all our internal fences as straight as we could. And that's been a good thing. Just reducing wastage of overlap and so forth, and turning unnecessarily. And obviously on water lines, we've put in another 10 k's of water line in replacement. And again, because the fence lines shifted, a lot of trough lines needed to as well, and that sort of thing. Around the garden, we took the opportunity, because our whole garden was written off, we just no-palmed a lot of it, pulled it out, started afresh. So, new pop-ups and all that sort of thing. And that's, incurred a fair bit more cost on doing that sort of stuff. But it's just an opportunity to put our own stamp on it, I suppose, and modernise a lot of the things that otherwise we wouldn't have looked at replacing or doing the work on. As far as our flock and self-replacing Dorper flock, we were already doing 3 lambings in 2 years, so we've continued to just rebuild the flock on our own breeding, but we have got a nutritionist involved with us full time to make sure that we've getting our ewe lambs up to weight and flushing and all that sort of thing, and just trying to make sure that we can maximise our genetic reproduction. We've managed to push our ewe lamb conception rates from sort of 50 or 60% up to 90% on scanning in the last 12 months. So that, we feel like we're more than doing we've made good inroads. We've still got room to keep improving, but the trouble is that you are full-time managing a farm normally, and also what we're trying to do is full-time reconstruct a farm from scratch. And it's just, there's not enough hours in the day, so you do have to prioritise your work. and know that cash flow is king. So you've got to keep that side of the business running, because all the insurance that we have or had covers what you've lost. It doesn't necessarily recover what you want to replace and how you want to replace it moving forwards. So the bank manager's been very important to us, and having a good relationship with him. And again, with the insurance, that's just a whole nother boost. Get to know the policies and talk to your neighbours, and that's been something that we've all found that quite a few of us are using similar insurance guys. So it was a matter of making sure that we keep up with some of the opportunities that were available that you may not have been aware of, and those sort of things. And the mental health and all that side of things, we've been having quite a few community get-together barbecues for the immediately affected and the surrounding neighbours as that. So it's probably brought our Sherwood community together more than it was before, which has been great. And don't be afraid to ring Tom, Dick or Harry a bit. Each week I'd speak to some of my neighbours just because, and they do the same. We all keep in contact, and I think that's been really good to make sure that people aren't getting too withdrawn and all those sort of things. And that there is plenty of help out there as well, but it's just a matter of keeping an eye on everyone to make sure we get through the experience together.
Yep. So, Charlie, just in closing, in hindsight, what were the key lessons that you learnt as a result of the bushfire that impacted you guys 2 years ago?
Treat it as an opportunity, because it's pretty easy to turn around and put our tail between our legs, and we just don't have the time for that. So I've gone, Betty, we've got a clean slate, we've got a lot of work, but we can really, there's things that we probably wouldn't have done unless we'd had something like this happen, in that there was too cost prohibitive to realign fences and all those sort of things. And probably the other key thing is hurry up and wait, because you want to get on with it, but unfortunately everything takes time and patience. And if I'd started rebuilding the day after the fire, I would be pulling it out and starting again on some particular things. So you do need to stop and actually analyse the whole big picture of your farm and your business and where you want to go as a family and so forth. And you've got to do that with a clear head. So don't be afraid to take a 2-day break. It is allowed, but it does help with the healing process. So, yeah, they're probably my key take-homes, I think, Jodie.
Oh, thanks for that, Charlie. Really appreciate your time today and you sharing your experiences and lessons learned from the bushfire at Sherwood 2 years ago. Beautiful family photo of you there. So thank you so much again for your time, Charlie. We'd just like to acknowledge the funders that brought us today's webinar. So AWI and Sheep Connect South Australia, the SA Sheep Industry Fund, and it was also supported by the South Australian Murray-Darling Basin Natural Resources Management Board through funding from the Australian Government's National Land Care Program and NRM levies. So thank you so much, Charlie. All the best with the rebuild phase, and we'll catch up with you next time. Thanks.